MacVoices is supported by Raycon, the makers of quality earbuds. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. In the first part of our conversation with Mike and Rachel Schmitz of the Intentional Family podcast, we talked about what the Intentional Family is and why they got into it and why they decided to do a podcast about it. We also talked about some of the concepts associated with the Intentional Family and how they're applying them, and especially tech-oriented things like screen time for the kids. This time, we get into a little bit deeper discussion of some of those concepts and also some of the non-tech activities that are included with the Intentional Family. I hope you enjoy the rest of this as much as I did. I have friends that, and full disclosure here, I am not married. I do not have children, which means that I'm allowed to express my opinions and not have to justify them. But I look at friends, and their answer to so many of these things is no. I'm just not going to give that to them. I'm not going to give them the phone. I'm going to limit the screen time, video games, whatever, to X number of minutes or hours a day, depending on the age and the people involved. And then that's just it. And because I didn't have it at my age, and they don't need it at their age, and I just look at them and think, man, you're not preparing them for living in the world that they are living in already. Mm-hmm. If anything, you're handicapping them. Mm-hmm. Now, that's my observation from afar. I'm not the one having to enforce it or set the rules or deal with the consequences. Am I way off base there?
I think that's everybody's plan at the beginning. But as Mike Tyson says, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, sometimes you getting punched in the mouth is your 3-year-old having a meltdown on an airplane. So, part of this is they can't always get what they want because you can't always get what you want.
True.
It's not kids and adults and two like totally different species here. They're just little people. Mm-hmm. We got to teach them the right ways to use stuff. So for me to say, no, you can only use a screen for 2 hours a day, period, when dad works off of his computer for 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
That's a little hypocritical. But we want to just kind of coach them in the right directions. And we do want to balance that. If they've been, looking at screens all day, go outside, go run around, go play basketball in the backyard, whatever. But ultimately, this is the world that they're going to live in. Yeah. And they got to know how to navigate it. So the way you learn to navigate it is not to just completely avoid it until they're 18. And then here you go.
Right.
Have the keys, but never taught you how to drive.
Yeah. And so the motive and intent is a huge factor. So screen time and technology is only going to increase. And so if we stick with, I didn't have a smartphone growing up. Well, they didn't exist. Okay. So this isn't even part of the argument. And for me too, smartphones didn't exist when I was growing up. But we have to look fully at what culture, what environment we are in currently, and set our children up for the best possible, all the tools that they can. Teach them responsibility now when they're little. And, Mike's motive and his intent is to work. He's creating, he's writing, etc. Your intent is to work on your coding. That's great. Your intent is to create something new with Legos. That's great. So that creators, not consumers, is really, really that's the phrase. That's the mantra. So we're trying to drive that into them so deep that they really examine their own intent and motives before they pick up a screen or look at a screen.
That intent, there's so much to unpack there. But I would argue that the most successful adults are the people who know how to say, want to do this thing. And then they have the ability to focus their attention and their energy towards accomplishing that thing. And they don't get distracted by something else. Because it's easy to make the excuses after the fact, this happened, so it's not my fault. Or you could own the process, and you could figure out, how to create a system where you actually follow through and do what you meant to do. Everybody's got the right intentions. It's the It's whether you have the ability to, and the discipline you've developed your focus muscle enough that you can follow through. That's becoming more and more valuable in our digital economy, I would say.
Yeah, and I would say we wouldn't let our oldest Toby, who's 12, use the iPad so much as he does, but he actually comes up with a finished Lego puzzle box every time. So if he didn't have a good track record, like Mike was saying, sure, I intend to build this Lego, and he's just using that to manipulate and like get a hook in us to let us have a device. And if he didn't follow through with a finished product, then okay, red flag. Why you keep asking for the device? Then he could be using it for something else. But because every time he comes up with a finished product, well, he has credibility and he has completed what he set out to do. So here you go. He gets to use it a lot more than his brothers.
That just requires from our end knowledge of what's going on. So sometimes they'll mess up, and you use it as an opportunity to have a discussion about it. You don't like lower the hammer, like I'm going to teach you, but how do we make adjustments so that this doesn't happen again? So that you don't go over your time and you don't lose your video games tomorrow. That's the kind of stuff that's where all the good stuff happens, is those types of conversations.
So first, I think you definitely need to create, not consume T-shirts. and I would like one of those actually. But more importantly, I think there's so many lessons here, and this is just an amazing. Your timing is amazing, with everybody being in lockdown. A lot of these lessons could be learned by people that I know, adults, and with and without families, but especially the ones with families who are facing a whole new set of challenges, whose kids weren't doing homeschooling. And now it looks like, at least here where we are, they're going to be doing at least some homeschooling, if not all homeschooling. And you all may be providing a blueprint, or at least some ideas for people to take on this challenge and not just be so completely overwhelmed by it. And, and Rachel, I did want to say one thing too, about the video. Your comment about the video game playing. This has been a number of years ago, but I remember where I guess I was coming out of college, and there was a generation of doctors who were basically surgeons, were just sort of stepping back and saying, we got to let the kids do it, because the dexterity that they have developed by playing all these hours of video games, they can do things with scalpels, and even then with the crude robotics at the time, that someone with all the experience of a surgeon just isn't comfortable doing. But those kids were just in there doing some amazing things. So I think you're absolutely right. There are a lot of skills that can be developed if you're a video gamer.
It's true.
So is this intended? Podcasting can be kind of a strange thing, because some of us start them and there's a series intended, and then it comes to an end, and others start and then just never seem to stop. Do you all have any specific objectives or goals for how long this will go on, or is this going to be almost a documentary kind of thing of your family and how this system works and how it evolves?
I don't know. We'll just take one episode at a time. I mean, there's so much involved that running out of topics won't be a problem anytime soon, but we're not going to beat a dead horse either. So if we're kind of getting to the point where like, I think we're done, then we'll definitely just wrap it up. So I can't say that we have any specific long-term plans with it, but as long as we have content, as long as we have an audience, we're game.
I would just add that I think our mindset really behind everything that we do, and I hope it comes through in the Intentional Family, is that we are in a constant state of growth. Mm-hmm. As long as we are growing and learning, one of the most effective ways to retain that is to teach it to other people. Yep. And in my mind, that's what the podcast is great for, is you synthesize these ideas, like you mentioned, Rachel, you figure things out by talking through them, and then you can apply them better. So from a selfish perspective, it helps us whether people listen or not.
It's true.
We don't have like a roadmap. Like once we get to this episode, the product is done, the book is available, you can go buy it now. Like that was never really
No, we've never been focused on subscribers or anything like that. It's been more so we have these things in our heart that we want to share, and if it helps a few people, great.
Yep. And really, we just started jotting all those down, and we realized that there's enough here for a book, which is why we were considering that at the beginning. But it's continuing to grow and evolve, and yeah, ideas are not the problem.
No, I can think of a number of ways you could go with it, but that'll be up for you all to decide. It occurs to me as I'm thinking back on our conversation that we spent a fairly decent amount of time, if not most of it, on sort of tech-related things, screen time and access to technology and, those kind of things. Are there any specific non-technology procedures, guidelines, I'm not even sure what the right word would be, that are part of this system? I know you talked about having a family meeting, and obviously that's non-tech. Any other aspects of it that are non-tech that are really kind of critical to what you're trying to do?
Well, I guess if this is what you're asking, we have a lot of things that we do in our home. Like, for example, we do family habit tracking. So I have a big whiteboard on in the hallway, and I have 6 specific habits that I track with the kids, and it's a team effort. So we either all win or we all lose, I guess. And so if all 7 parts of each pie are filled in by the end of the week, they get to have their reward, and they get to choose it as a group. So, for example, last week the reward was donuts. Sometimes their reward for the week is like an hour of a group game that they like to do, like Mario Party or something. But what it is like, are your toys tidy by the end of the day? That's one of them. Did you brush your teeth twice today? And did you have car manners? Like, did you drive mom crazy in the car, or were you nice so she could focus on driving and keep everyone safe? Did you have bedtime manners? Did you do all the things without having to come back 15 times out of your room and saying, I forgot this and I forgot this? So those are some of the things we have in place to help them have good habits. That's one that I thought of off the top of my head. Do you have anything, Mike? Anything else?
Well, there's other stuff that we've done. It's all kind of been in flux and evolving over the last couple months. For a while, I was doing the weekly one-on-ones where I would take a different kid to coffee once a week, and I get coffee, they get hot chocolate, and we just talk and play a game. We've kind of changed that a little bit though, to where we play a lot more games together as a family. So same sort of thing, but a different version of it. Ultimately, we gotta be investing now. We recognize that. So specifically in that instance, we want to invest the time so that when they are older, when they are teenagers and they're dealing with stuff, they feel like they can come and talk to us about things, because they're used to having those conversations and they're used to feeling heard. Even if they don't get their way, they still feel like they've been heard by mom and dad, and they understand the reasoning why we do certain things. Another one, which we haven't really done a whole lot, again because we haven't gone anywhere, but we could probably get back into it, is like if we catch somebody doing something like above and beyond.
Oh, right.
We ask the whole group to go clean up stuff in the basement. Basement's kind of the playroom. And one of them goes right away and just like hammers it out. They get a star. And if they get a group 100 stars, then we do something bigger. Like we've gone roller skating. We've gone to like, it's not really like an arcade, but kind of, it's called Badger Sports Park. And then the person with the most stars is the MVP. So if we go to the arcade, they get an extra $5 worth of tokens or something.
MacVoices is supported by Raycon, the makers of quality earbuds. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/MacVoices. Raycon makes some of the best wireless earbuds I've tried. Note the wireless designation. There's not a single cable or wire in the Raycon earbuds package, except the charging cable, of course. But when in use, The earbuds go in your ears, the charging case goes in your pocket, and you're done. And you might not even need the charging part of the charging case, since the earbuds themselves have a 6-hour playtime. But it makes a nice protected place to put them when you take them out, and they pick up a little more juice along the way. Why earbuds? I don't need the people around me listening to the music I like, the audiobook I'm listening to, or overhearing my phone conversation. But I also don't need to hear what they're listening to as well. With Raycon, you get a variety of earbud tips to make sure you get that noise isolating fit that you want and need. And don't forget that Raycon earbuds start at about half the price of competing wireless options. Why not listen to the people who really know good sound? Musicians like Melissa Etheridge are obsessed with Raycon, and once you try them, you will be too. Now's the time to get the latest and greatest from Raycon. Get 15% off your order at buyraycon.com/MacVoices. That's BUYRAYCON.com/MacVoices for 15% off your Raycon wireless earbuds. BuyRaycon.com/MacVoices for 15% off. Thanks to Raycon for their support of MacVoices. This is fascinating. And again, I haven't done the parenting thing, but the idea, the lessons you're imparting, Rachel, I love the whiteboard thing because you're creating teamwork, you're creating responsibility. You're creating peer pressure, which but in a positive
peer pressure.
sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly, and I love that. And Mike, I'm curious. So, have you found that is there a detriment to maybe not spending that specific time with a specific child, with making it a little more of a group thing?
Well, there probably would be, although with me being home all the time and they being home all the time, in reality, there ends up being little pockets of time where I'm able to do like smaller versions of that. Where in the past, maybe I would have said, like, I'm working from 8 to 4, so you can't bother me during this time. But they try to poke their head in the office anyways, And in the
They're
past,
not the only ones, I'll admit.
in the past, it's like, no, I don't have time for that. Like, I'm doing something right now. So if you want to play basketball, whatever, like, we can do that when I'm done. But I'm trying to be more flexible given the state of things at the moment. So when Malachi doesn't realize that I'm in the middle of something and pops in with show me like a little Lego thing that he made, like, I'll sit and talk to him about it for a couple of minutes. Hey, you want to try this? Like, I'll go do something with them for a couple of minutes. It's like strategic breaks based off of their interest instead of my schedule, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think it makes perfect sense, and I'm sure some of that discipline is a little easier with as the kids get older. The young ones always, it's sort of
Demand
state
your
of
attention.
mind. Well, and just the thought pops in. Oh, I want to show this to Dad, so Dad's over there. I'm going to go show it to him.
Mhm.
And there's no sense of Dad's working, and I shouldn't interrupt him. So this is really interesting. This is really interesting. I congratulate you all on what you're trying to do with the family, but also on deciding to share it in this fashion. Have you received feedback from your listeners as to, gee, I really agree with this, love it, or I really disagree with this, and I think you're doing it wrong?
I've received some messages and phone calls from some people I know that are acquaintances or friends, and it's been really positive, and they've been really encouraged by it, and so that's been cool.
That's the
Mike's
thing is like you always have to stare down this monster who's telling you that you don't have enough experience, you're not qualified to speak to this, and so it's easy to give into that and be like, you're right, I'm just not going to do anything. Fear will tell you that you are always too young or too old and no one's going to listen to you. And if you just are able to quiet that and just make your thing, again, we're not trying to say like we've got it all figured out, but just like sharing what we learn, then it's amazing how encouraging that is to other people. And I've experienced that not just with this project, but with a lot of the stuff that I've done the last several years, it's honestly the stuff that keeps me going. When you get an email from somebody who says, I was contemplating suicide and I read your book and it gave me hope. Like, how can you not share it after that?
Yeah.
And how can you not feel good about that? Yeah.
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 Yeah, it definitely took so long to get this going because I definitely had to fight that a lot about how, I'm too young to share these things. Like I have so many people I know that are older and more experienced than me. They should be the ones doing this, and everyone has something good to offer though. And so I had to get over that and realize that anything good in me that has worked, and if it can help someone else or my own failures, then I want to help someone. I want to have them learn the lessons the easier way than the hard way. And I feel like it would be selfish for me to hold it all in.
Well, and the fact that you're not holding yourselves out as experts, you're holding yourselves out as people who are going through this, working your way through it, trying things and evolving things as both as the kids grow and as you learn and find that this method seems to work for us. Maybe not for everybody. For you, it works, and to try it, I think is spectacular. And you're right. The toughest thing, I mean, people talk about starting a podcast and, well, I got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to do the other. And it's like the toughest thing to do is just start, just hit that button
true.
or, upload that file and just don't listen to the naysayers because kind of if you share it on YouTube or any of the social media, you're going to have plenty of naysayers. That just seems to be what they do. And so if you are experiencing any of that, please don't listen to them. Just keep doing what you're doing. I think this is an amazingly valuable and at a really important time.
Just be real. Don't project yourself as perfect, and you don't have to worry about people pointing out your flaws because you know that you make mistakes. That's one other thing I would say that really makes all of this stuff work is that we do not, as the parents, say like, well, we know better and you just have to trust us. We miss it from time to time, and when we do, we apologize to our kids. Like, hey, I reacted wrong there. I came down on you too hard. Like, I shouldn't have done that. Do you forgive me? And of course they do, because they just want to have a right relationship with mom and dad. But as a parent, I think it's easy to think like if you make a mistake in front of your kids, then that is going to be the thing that's going to destroy your platform. When really it's the opposite. When you pretend to have it all together and you think your kids don't notice all the mistakes that you're making, that's the thing that's destroying your platform.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, kids are always a lot smarter than you give them credit for. And
Yes,
they're always thinking more. And I think this is an observation from a distance, but at 13, 14 now, they probably are more like we were, or at least I was. I won't include you guys, and like I was at 20. I mean, because they on those iPads, on those iPhones, on those computers, they have access to knowledge about anything. And I mean, and not just the forbidden stuff that every kid seeks out, but just everything. So if they decide they're interested in dinosaurs, I mean, they can become a paleontologist overnight, if they really want to. It's as opposed to having 4 or 5 books in the school library. So I sometimes wonder what friends of mine and me too, what we would have turned out like if we'd had access to all that information. What difference would it have made in our lives? And now these kids, I mean, they're down that path in the road. They have access to it. So it's just going to be, what do they do with it? And you two are giving them the tools to figure out what works and what doesn't, and hopefully to be a little more responsible than a lot of people are, including some adults I know.
It's not just about the information. There's so much information, and the fact that you have information doesn't necessarily mean that it does you any good. What are you doing with the information that you are gathering? That's kind of one of the reasons that I do sketch notes, is I want to retain the stuff that I take notes on. I don't want to just have a bunch of stuff in a digital haystack where I can go back and search for something later if I think of that specific thing. I want it to affect the day-to-day. I want to have more tools in the mental toolbox. So don't just collect the facts, but what are you going to do with that knowledge that you're gaining? What are you going to make? What are you going to create with that?
Great point. Great point. So where do folks go to get the podcast or to see? Is there a website associated with the podcast where you provide supplemental information, or is it strictly the podcast?
It's strictly the podcast right now, but we're at IntentionalFamily.fm and we're on iTunes. And that's pretty much where you can find us right now. We're both on Twitter, but we don't have a specific Intentional Family account or anything.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure I have links and everything to both of you and to the site in the show notes, so folks can definitely easily find you and communicate with you if they want. I hope they found some of this interesting, because I certainly have. And I, again, congratulate you both on not just the podcast, but also the whole sharing of the experience and the way you're trying to do what you're trying to do. Good job. Good job.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thank you. Thank you. When did we start talking about doing this show?
It was about 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's about right. That's kind of what I thought. Yeah. Well, we got it done.
Yeah.
So now but the invitation is open. I want you to come back in 6 months or a little more and tell us, how it's evolved, how it's going, because I think that, I'm sure you've seen a lot of evolution already. And I hope with a wider audience, as you gain it, there will be more insights and more information to share.
Yeah, definitely. We'd love to come back.
And Mike, I expect to see you back here sometime with something interesting and exciting.
All right. Deal.
We lost Rachel there for a second. Folks,
Sorry.
I'm Chuck Joyner. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices, the IntentionalFamily.fm. Go and check it out. I've really been intrigued by this, and especially during these challenging times with lockdown and kids not being able to go back to school and all. I think there's a lot to be learned here for a lot of us, and even those of us who don't have kids at home. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.